They had no idea it was watching. The villagers had grown used to the rustle of leaves in the dark, the flicker of movement behind the tree-line, the distant thud of something heavy stepping where no human foot would dare. But as the months passed without attack, fear gave way to routine. Caution dulled into comfort. Until the predator crept closer. The trees surrounding the human settlement on Kasari 9 were ancient, growing in spirals that twisted toward a lavender sky, their bark the color of oxidized blood. The village of Lawn Tree, nestled in a clearing, looked laughably fragile compared to the vast jungle looming around it. Prefab huts, solar panels patched with tape, string lights powered by jury-rig batteries. A tiny outpost of stubborn settlers trying to survive a planet that hadn't exactly welcomed them. And watching from that jungle, perfectly still, was a thing not born of Earth. It was tall, scaled, and serpentine in the shoulders but carried a feline grace in its crouch. For limbs, two of them clawed for climbing, the others broader, muscular, designed for grappling prey. Its skin shimmered like wet obsidian, flecked with iridescent marks that pulsed faintly in the dark. It had stalked prey before, on other planets, in other jungles. The humans here were noisy, unaware, and poorly defended. The perfect herd to cull from. Except there was one it couldn't categorize. A small one. No claws. No fangs. Not even fur. It was soft and pink and sticky and loud. Dangerously so. And for some reason, it wandered freely, carrying a strange, brown object in one hand while babbling nonsense to itself in high-pitched tones that grated across the creature's sensitive hearing membranes. The predator watched. It did not strike. It did not know why. At the edge of the village, beneath a half-collapsed solar canopy, 5-year-old Junie Wells was squatting in the dirt. Her blonde curls were matted with dust. Her overalls had smudges of grease and cookie crumbs. She was elbow-deep in a bucket of screws, singing a garbled version of "Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star," and chewing on a chocolate-chip cookie like it held the secrets of the universe. She had no idea she was being observed. Nor did her older brother, Marcus, who leaned against the nearest structure, a battered calms tower repurposed as a lookout post, arguing with his tablet. At 15, Marcus had inherited the sacred teenage responsibility of being annoyed at everyone, especially Junie, especially when he was supposed to be watching her. "Junie!" he barked, glancing up. "Quit feeding cookies to the capacitor rats! You're not their mom!" Junie blinked at him, face dead serious. "Not rats. Friends," Marcus groaned. From the jungle, the predator tilted its head. The small one was feeding others? Sharing? This was not typical prey behavior. And the other, clearly dominant due to its vocal tone, was not asserting territory but complaining. Curious. Something primal urged it to pounce. But another impulse, foreign and deeply unsettling, held it back. It remembered being offered something once. Not food. Not comfort. A chance. Deep in its memory, from another life, it had seen a similar gesture, one life offering peace to another. And peace was not something the predator had known since before the fall of its kind. Across the clearing, the village elder stumbled out of the main hut, swearing. Elder Neodara was a woman whose spine curved like a blade, and whose temper had eroded softer leaders long ago. She was in her 60s, ex-military, and wore her scars like medals. But even she had no protocol for what to do about a predator you couldn't see. For months something had been circling them. No attacks. No signs of hunting. But sensors glitched. Power grids failed. Motion scanners reported shadows that shouldn't be there. Once, they'd found a carcass, one of the local 6-legged grazers, gutted and left neatly outside the village border. As if someone was showing off. The colony AI, such as it was, kept flagging. Inconclusive biological anomaly. Darrow had her own term, unwelcome guest. She paced toward Marcus, eyes narrowed. "Report." "Nothing on the scanner," Marcus said, then paused. "But Junie's been staring at the tree-line again." "I have not," Junie protested with her mouth full of cookie. The predator watched. Every word, every tone, fed its understanding of this strange pack. The older female was alpha, confident, reactive. The adolescent was unsure, still forming hierarchy. The small one, however, had no fear. That was dangerous. Or beautiful. On the fourth night, the creature moved closer. Junie sat cross-legged outside the hut, her arms wrapped around a ragged stuffed bear. The solar lights flickered. A dry wind stirred the leaves. She stared directly into the trees. "I see you," she said softly. Marcus, half asleep at the lookout, blinked awake. "What?" Junie pointed. "The shiny kitty's back." Marcus rubbed his eyes and looked into the dark. Nothing. But Elder Darrow, roused by the voice, stepped out of the hut and did see something. A reflection. 2 pinpoints of iridescent green, not high up in the canopy but at ground level. Watching. She froze. Not a hallucination. Not a shadow. Real. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Inside. Now." But Junie didn't move. She reached into her cookie pouch, broke off a piece, and walked calmly to the village edge. "Here," she said, holding out the crumbly bite-sized piece in her palm. "It's warm. I saved it." The predator stared at the offering. It did not make sense. She was offering sustenance to a hunter. A child, with no defense, no armor, no weapon, standing as if it were the most normal thing in the world to feed something that could slice her in half. This was not the prey it had expected. This was something else. And for a moment, just one, the predator forgot it had ever been hungry. Elder Darrow's voice was sharp. "Junie! Inside! Now!" The spell broke. The creature vanished into the trees. But not far. That night, the calms went down again. The wind shifted. The motion sensors buzzed. Yet nothing breached the village. And in the morning, when Marcus opened the front door, he found something strange at the threshold. A perfectly intact field rodent, skinned, cleaned, laid out with surgical precision. A gift. Darrow stared at it grimly. "It's responding." "To what?" Marcus asked. "To her." The village council gathered that evening in the central dome, flickering holodisplays lighting their tense expressions. 12 settlers? All tired, all worried. The logs were clear, the predator was real, intelligent, and observant. But no one agreed on what to do. Some wanted to set traps. Some wanted to evacuate. And one voice, Darrow's, suggested something wild. "What if we talk to it?" she said. A silence fell over the table. "You mean like diplomacy?" one engineer asked, incredulous. Darrow pointed to the cleaned carcass. "That's not a kill. That's communication. It saw her cookie as a gift. It answered. This is more than a beast." Junie, who had snuck in beneath the table with her bear and another cookie, piped up cheerfully. "It's not mean. It's lonely." The predator waited that night. Curious. Conflicted. It had observed, tested, offered. And been met not with spears, but sweetness. It did not understand what it was feeling, but whatever it wasn't hunger. It was the beginning of something even more dangerous. It was connection. It could have ended the village that night. Every sentry, every perimeter sensor, every camera, they were all tuned to human logic, human speed, human eyes. And none of them could see the shape that moved between the trees, silent as dusk, cloaked in something beyond camouflage. The predator watched the firelight flicker inside the dome, listened to the faint hum of a lullaby through the walls, and for a second, considered stepping forward. Not to attack, but to understand. What kind of prey made gifts? What kind of child walked toward a killer and smiled? It waited until the lights dimmed. Then crept forward, one scaled limb at a time, until it stood no more than 5 meters from the hut where the cubs slept. It could smell her. Sweet. Warm. Tiny. And there, just outside the door, was a small folded napkin. On it, another cookie. A peace offering. Again. It didn't make sense. Not to the predator it used to be. But the old self, the one it hadn't heard in years, felt something stir. It did not take the cookie. Not yet. But it left something in return, a curved, iridescent tooth, pulled painlessly from a jaw that no longer needed it to feed. It placed it gently on the napkin, then vanished like vapor before the sun. Morning brought chaos. Marcus was the first to find the tooth. He knelt beside it like it was a bomb. "What is that?" Elder Darrow ran her scanner across the strange object, jaw tightening. "Organic. High-density protein lattice. Still warm." She paused. "It's a tooth." Junie skipped over, arms full of cereal and one sock falling off her foot. "It liked the cookie!" The council was called again. This time, the atmosphere was sharper. Suspicion had curdled into tension. "What if it's manipulating us?" one colonist snapped. "Softening us up before it strikes?" "Or testing us," said another. "It's sentient. Maybe even sapient." "No," Darrow said firmly. "It's making contact." "What kind of contact includes a tooth?" But the veteran only folded her arms and stared at the jungle. "The kind that's choosing not to kill us." That evening, Darrow made a decision. She placed the data pad on the village's outermost stone and pressed record. "This is Commander Nia Darrow, acting liaison for Lantry Colony. To the unknown entity watching us, if you can understand this message, know that we are not your enemy. We do not wish to harm you. We seek coexistence. We will leave gifts and knowledge if you'll accept them. We only ask that you do the same." Then she turned off the pad and placed it next to a new cookie. Junie added a crayon drawing of the creature beside her and Marcus, all holding hands. The predator's claws were too big, and Marcus was frowning in the sketch. But it was sincere. The jungle said nothing. Not that night. Not the next. But on the third night, the pad was gone. So was the cookie. In its place? A feather. No bird on Kasari 9 had feathers. Not ones like this. Jet black, long as a forearm, and shimmering with internal light that moved like starlight trapped under skin. And on a nearby tree, carved into the bark, carefully, purposefully, was a symbol. Not words. But a shape. A mirror of Junie's drawing. 3 figures. One smaller. One with claws. Together. A gasp ran through the villagers. Darrow stared. "It understands." From then on, the exchanges became ritual. Every third night, the villagers left gifts, food, tools, pictures, recordings. The predator responded with art made from bone and stone, odd objects clearly scavenged from ancient wrecks deep in the jungle, and once, a musical instrument made from a hollow stalk that sang like a wind chime when held to the ear. The village changed. So did the predator. No longer did it circle in silence. It began walking the edge of the trees during daylight, just far enough to be glimpsed. Once, Marcus spotted it watching Junie chase a frog, head tilted curiously. "You're just gonna let it stalk us?" he barked at Darrow that night. "It's not stalking anymore," she replied. "It's learning. Or waiting for us to slip up. Or realizing we're more than meat." Marcus didn't sleep that night. Neither did the predator. It remembered something it had long forgotten: music. The little one sang in the morning. Every morning. Her voice thin but unafraid. Notes that weren't for hunting or territory or warning. They were joy. Unreasonable. Illogical. But impossible to ignore. One afternoon, Junie toddled to the village edge with the drawing of the sky. She stopped, squinting into the trees. "You want a color too?" Silence. Then, a whisper of movement. The creature stepped forward. Fully visible now. 10 feet tall, black scales catching the sun, claws relaxed at its sides. Its head was alien, no mouth, no visible ears, just a smooth surface where a face should be, lit faintly from within. The villagers froze. Junie didn't flinch. She extended the drawing. The predator knelt, folding its long limbs until it met her eyes. Slowly, delicately, it reached out one claw and touched the paper. Then nodded. Darrow raised a hand to stop anyone from panicking. "Let it happen!" The creature took the drawing. And in exchange, from a pouch on its back, it produced a spiral of etched metal. A gift. No threatening motion. No sound. Junie beamed. You're my best shimmery friend. The predator cocked its head. Best? It didn't know what that meant. But it liked how it felt. That evening, the village glowed with something new. Hope. But hope always brings risk. Because someone else was watching. At 0230, the sky above Lantry tore open with thunder. A ship, military grade, orbit-worn, and bristling with antennas, descended without warning. Dust swirled. Alarms screamed. Villagers scrambled from their huts as the heavy-legged vessel landed at the southern ridge. 3 men in black armor stepped out, followed by a fourth, a lean figure with a badge that glinted even in the dim red lights. Colonial Defense Corps. Not allies. They hadn't sent a warning. They weren't here to help. Perimeter breach. One of the agents barked. What's your threat index? Darrow stiffened. We've had no hostilities. You've had visits. From a Class Delta Predator. Logged from multiple sensors. It's never attacked. We've established communication. That's not your job. The lead agent snapped. Containment is. We've built trust. You can't just. But they were already deploying signal jammers. Drones. Scent trackers. Thermal baits. Junie ran out barefoot, still half asleep. Where's the shimmery friend? Darrow scooped her up before she could reach the soldiers. The agents weren't listening. They were already moving toward the trees. And from within the jungle, something watched back. The predator felt the shift. New scent. New danger. Metal. Burned ozone. Noise that did not belong. It crouched low, eyes narrowing. They'd come for it. The humans, the other humans, were predators too. And this time, they didn't come with gifts. They didn't ask. They didn't care. To the Colonial Defense Corps, Lantry wasn't a home. It was a liability. A blip on a chart, a potential PR disaster if word got out that a Class Delta Predator was being fed cookies by a child. And so they came with guns. By sunrise, the jungle's perimeter had been blanketed with motion-triggered mines. The soldiers deployed drones that buzzed like angry hornets, scanning for heat signatures with twitchy, lethal precision. One of them even dropped a sonic lure that emitted a low-frequency pulse, a frequency meant to mimic distress. A frequency designed to bait. They called it a clean engagement. But the villagers knew what it was, a hunt. Junie didn't understand why everyone was shouting. Or why her picture had been torn from the tree. Or why her cookie pouch had been emptied, stomped on by a soldier who sneered at her like she was a bug. Marcus had tried to argue. You don't get it, it's not hostile. The corporal snapped back. It breathes. That's enough. The predator hadn't been seen since the ship landed. No prints. No sound. Nothing. As if it had simply melted back into myth. But Darrow knew better. It's watching, she whispered to Marcus as they stood on the dome's rooftop. That thing didn't survive this long by being careless. You think it'll run? I think, Darrow said grimly, it's deciding whether we're worth saving. That night the attack came, but not from the jungle. One of the soldiers, Agent Kroll, left the perimeter to relieve himself. The drone logs caught a flicker of motion. A blur. Then nothing but static. By the time the others arrived, his armor was empty. Clean. Not a drop of blood. Just gone. The commander, Lieutenant Marr, snapped the tablet shut. Contact established, he growled. Engage Protocol Volta 7. Burn the Trilene. No! Darrow barked. It didn't kill him, it took him. That's a warning! We're past warnings. He tapped his comms. 2 drones dropped canisters into the underbrush. A hiss followed. Then a wave of searing white flame licked up from the roots. The forest screamed. It wasn't just fire. It was chemical. Designed to burn through chitin, hide, bone. And deep in that rising inferno, something roared. Not a cry of pain. A challenge. The villagers scattered as shadows burst from the trees. Not the predator, but something it had called. Giant shapes, insect armor-plated, six-limbed beasts with reflective eyes and bone-bladed limbs, charged from the jungle in utter silence. The soldiers opened fire. Rounds pinged and ricocheted. Drones swarmed. 2 villagers were pulled to safety. 1 wasn't. The bees trampled the southern solar array, crushed a water tank, and vanished back into the green, leaving steam and silence in its wake. The defense corps adjusted their weapons. "They're not alone," Marcus whispered. Darrow didn't reply. She was staring at the edge of the trees. And the figure that stood there now. The predator. But not as before. Its body was marked with streaks of glowing sap, war paint. Across its chest hung the feather it had once offered as a gift. It no longer crouched. It stood tall, defiant, watching the fire fade. And then it did something no one expected. It walked forward. Unarmed. Open-handed. Straight into the line of fire. Every rifle locked on it. Marcus held his breath. "What's it doing?" "Ending this." Mar raised his weapon. "Target in range." "Firing." "No!" Junie shrieked. She ran straight past the barricades, barefoot on gravel, cookie pouch slung like a bandolier across her chest. The predator stopped. So did every rifle. Junie stood between the rifles and the creature. Her arms outstretched. Shaking, but firm. "You stop right now!" she yelled at Mar. "She's in the line of fire!" a soldier hissed. "She is the line of fire!" Darrow snapped. "Put those weapons down!" The predator knelt. It didn't touch Junie. It simply unhooked the spiral metal gift she'd given it days ago, now dangling from a braided cord, and held it up. "Peace." Darrow took a step forward. "You understand us, don't you?" The creature did not speak. But it nodded. Junie beamed, pulled a cookie from her pouch, and gently placed it in its claw. The predator bowed. And the tension shattered. Until the scream came. From behind. One of the drones, glitching, fired. Not at the predator. At Marcus. A stun burst. Wrong frequency. High voltage. The boy dropped like a stone. Chaos erupted. Junie screamed. Darrow tackled her to the ground. Soldiers scrambled to regain control of the drones, shouting overlapping commands. Mar barked into his mic. "Cease fire! Cease fire!" But it was too late. The predator lunged. It didn't strike Junie. It didn't flee. It moved with terrifying speed toward Marcus, scooping the boy's limp body into its arms with a gentleness that defied its bulk, and vanished into the smoke of the burning tree line. "No!" Darrow shouted. "Hold fire! Hold fire!" But Lieutenant Mar didn't care. He saw only the extraction of a target. A kill order. Engage. Full pursuit. Dozens of drones lifted into the air. Sensors tracked movement. Armor clicked into place. The hunt had begun. But this time, they were not the hunters. Inside the jungle, the predator ran low and fast, its limbs blurring as it ducked through vines and over roots. Marcus stirred in its arms, groaning. The stun bolt had fried his vest circuits, but hadn't stopped his heart. He blinked up at the glowing eyes above him. "You saved me?" The creature didn't answer. It didn't have to. They were deep in a cavern by nightfall. One the predator had used for years. The walls were carved with images, strange symbols, but some newly familiar. One showed a small child. With a cookie. Marcus touched the wall, breath caught in his throat. "Is that Junie?" The predator looked at him. And for the first time, spoke. Not in words. In sound. A soft tone. Musical. Echoing. It hummed the same lullaby Junie sang every morning. Off-key. But perfect. Marcus laughed, even through the pain. "You really like her, huh?" The predator tapped its chest. Then gently placed Marcus down and stepped back. Outside, the drones buzzed louder. The soldiers were close. But the predator didn't run. It turned toward the cave entrance, raised both claws high, and let out a roar that split the trees and brought the jungle alive. Dozens of eyes opened in the dark. The defenders had arrived. For the first time in generations, a predator stood between danger and something it had chosen to protect. This wasn't a hunt anymore. It was war. And the jungle had picked a side. They thought they were tracking a monster. What they didn't realize was that the monster had stopped running. It was waiting. And behind it, so was the entire jungle. The first drone didn't see the tripwire. One moment it was weaving between trees, transmitting infrared telemetry. The next, it hit a thin strand of hardened resin and detonated midair. No fireball. Just a violent pop and a hiss of electronics frying. 10 more went dark within seconds. Inside the cave, Marcus sat propped against the wall, breathing slower now, the stun pulse finally wearing off. The predator crouched beside him, one clawed hand resting protectively on his shoulder. Not to pin him down. To steady him. Anchor him. They listened to the chaos outside. "You don't have to fight them," Marcus whispered. "They won't stop." The predator didn't look at him. It looked at the drawing. Junie's crayon art had been folded and carried for days in its satchel, weather-worn now, but still visible. 3 figures, all holding hands. The smallest one grinning. One of them, Claude. It touched the drawing with the tip of one claw, gently. Then stood. Outside, the soldiers were pushing hard through the undergrowth. Flashlights cut through the mist. Mech stomped through the vines. Lieutenant Marr was in front, barking orders. "I want that thing down. Dead. Not captured. It took a human." "No," said Darrow, stepping forward. He froze. "Excuse me? It saved one. Step aside, Commander. Don't do this. You've lost command authority. As of touchdown, this became a Delta-level extraction op." "You mean execution," she spat. Marr stepped past her. He would never take the next step. Because the jungle moved. Without warning, the undergrowth surged. Not with beasts, but with traps. Nets made from sap-hardened fibers whipped from the canopy. Branches snapped downward with crushing force. Hidden pits opened in the ground, each one baited and sprung with ancient, instinctual precision. 2 soldiers screamed. Another vanished into the green with a startled gasp. Marr raised his rifle. But then the predator stepped into the clearing. And everything stopped. No monsters beside it. No war beast flanking it. Just the creature itself, tall and bare, claws out, but not raised. It walked forward slowly, eyes glowing. Then it held something high. Marcus's drawing. And in the other claw, the crumpled cookie pouch. Junie's. Everyone froze. Even the mechs. Lieutenant Marr's hand twitched at the trigger. And that's when Junie ran into the clearing. Again. This time, Darrow didn't stop her. She came barefoot, dragging her bare, eyes wide and teary, and called out with all the conviction her tiny lungs could hold. "Stop yelling at my friend!" The predator turned, dropped to one knee, and lowered its head. Junie walked right up to it. And hugged it. No screams. No fear. Just 2 arms around something that no one else had ever dared touch. The jungle held its breath. And Lieutenant Marr lowered his weapon. Not because he understood. But because something bigger was happening. Junie stepped back and looked up at the soldiers. "It's not bad," she said simply. "It just needed a cookie." Then, for good measure, she added, "Everyone does sometimes." And with that, the war ended. Not with a battle, but with a giggle. The months that followed changed everything. The Colonial Defense Corps was forced to declassify the incident, reluctantly, and only after video of the hug leaked to the wider network. The footage of a small girl embracing a 10-foot bioengineered apex hunter became a symbol. Of trust. Of change. Of something new. Researchers descended on Lawntree, but not to dissect. To learn. Linguists, xenoethologists, diplomats. All trying to understand what the villagers already knew. The predator wasn't a weapon. It was a survivor. And now, a guardian. It never spoke in words. Not once. But it didn't need to. The village flourished under its watch. Farms extended toward the trees. Children played at the border without fear. Even Marcus, now fitted with a bioregulated vest from the Predator's own tech, led the local scout team. As for Junie, she appointed herself ambassador of snack-based diplomacy. And every week, without fail, she left a fresh cookie on the same tree stump by the jungle's edge. Sometimes it disappeared. Sometimes she found something in its place: feathers, carvings, one time even a cluster of bioluminescent fruit shaped like a smiley face. But the real gift came one morning, when she turned to find the predator standing behind her, silent as ever. This time, it did not bow. It reached into its satchel, and pulled out a cookie. It had made one. Or tried to. Junie took the strange, oddly shaped thing with reverence. Sniffed it. Took a bite. Chewed thoughtfully. Needs sugar. The predator tilted its head. Junie held out her hand. I'll teach you. And it took her hand. Years passed. The village grew. The predator never left. It aged, slightly. Slower than the humans. But it remained the same guardian who had once watched from the trees, uncertain, hungry, afraid of its own nature. Now it walked openly. Helped repair roofs. Helped frighten off wild scavengers. And sometimes just sat near the children while they played, quietly watching the way only a protector could. Its name, as best as they could translate it, was a sequence of tones that no human could pronounce. But Junie, refusing to be left out, gave it a new name. Mookie. Because it sounded like cookie. And it never corrected her. The name stuck. And the predator didn't seem to mind. On the wall of the central hall, carved into metal, hung a plaque etched with the symbols from the predator's own claw, 3 figures, holding hands. And beneath it, in both Galactic and English script, it read, "Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is offer a cookie."